once we get in the camp and that really so much after camp, where do you guys draw the line where you start to phase it and you start to phase your kick count down? Meaning, like for a while I've done it like at 1 through 3, 4 through 7, and then 7 through the rest, trying to eliminate and cut that kick count down. What's the line for you guys, and what's the number you're talking about as far as kick/punters through a week in which you try to phase that thing down for guys?
I'll kind of approach that a question philosophically. In July, we're doing 2 sessions a week with the whole battery, just 2 sessions a week. And we do one of those sessions is just them. It is, we do have a script to follow, and then, but we allow them to kind of work on the things they need to work on. The second session is we try to simulate a game day and different kicks, and you only get one, and it's all charted. We're treating that like their game day. They don't get to redo anything. So, you make it or miss it. And these are your punts, and we script everything. And when you're done, you walk off the field. But just 2 sessions in July. And then the amount of kicks for that, varies. But when we get to camp, we don't do as much early on. They really don't like me in camp because I'm resting them and I'm sitting them down, and we're doing auxiliary work. And we are no more than 3 times a week kicking one guy. So we try to rest. Now, all this comes from when we were at JMU and we were playing 16 games a year, and you want your kickers to be the best at the end of the season when it matters the most and it's cold, and you want to kick a touchback because you're on your third team left bullet on kickoff team. So, it's all this, it all starts in August, and that rest builds up. And then for us, if you would look at weeks 1 through 3, our guys are never really, they are kicking back to back on a Wednesday, Thursday, because Thursday is an all teams day for us, but they're no more than 100 kicks a week once we start the season. And that includes their warm-up kicks on game day. And so we try to limit it a lot. And that's just, I'm a big rest guy. I had 2 brothers that I didn't kick, I didn't punt, but I had 2 brothers that did. They were 4-year starters, and they finished their junior and senior year getting cortisone shots in their labrum, because you just can't ask those guys to do all that. And so they may hate you, but at the end of early on in the season, but they're going to like you at the end of the season when it matters the most. And, as the season progresses, like any good coach, you got to plan week 1 through 3, 4 through 7, whatever it is, but you got to adjust, and you got to go off how they're feeling. And we always err on the side of caution and sitting them down, because there's just so many different drills they can do to get better without having to do the full operation. And once we get in season, we want them to feel as rhythmic and routine as possible and as confident as possible. So we're really going to, once we get the season rolling and we know what to do and how to do it, we just want to get them to game day where they can do what they do best and feel really good.
So I would say, very similar. In June, our guys are kicking together one day a week, full battery, what I call group kicking. They're doing that one day a week. And anything in addition to that is on their own. And we try to do an additional day of what we call EDDs, or everyday drills, where, it's not necessarily foot to ball. It's more, and really a lot of that's ball handling between the snappers, holders, and punters. I'm a big believer in those guys can't get enough of that work. But the focus really is speed, power, and explosion, and really the strength and conditioning aspect of that. And the best guys I've been around, and the more NFL guys I talk to, the more obsessed they are with the strength and conditioning phase, and doing that specifically to address what Grant was talking about, for injury prevention, and feeling strong and powerful for the duration of the season. Thursday, and then July, we ramp it up, try to increase the volume. We go to 2 days a week, and in those days, you're talking live field goals, probably 16 reps per person. They're probably getting maybe 2 to 3 maximum full kickoffs. and then they might do some auxiliary kickoffs like pooches or squibs or onsides or, whatever that may be. And then punters are probably getting, right around 20. And that's a mixture of, boundary punts, field punts, what we call sky. Some people call it pooch punts. Just working those different things along the script. And then once we get into camp, I mean, I map out, once I get the kind of master schedule, I'll map out every single day for the specialists. So what's the emphasis area, what they're working on. The maximum that they would ever do during preseason would be 3 consecutive days, but one of those days is going to be really, really, it might be like for a field goal kicker or for a kicker, it might be, hey man, you got to get 4, field goals in a script today. So, hey, I want you to do, the minimal amount of warm up that you need to do that. And I think a lot of it, in terms of, volume and number of reps depends on a couple things. One, how experienced is the guy, right? Like, because that's probably going to dictate how much you actually trust him. And it's also going to, like, how many reps does the guy have on his body, right? I think that matters. And maybe a younger guy's a little bit more during preseason camp, depending on what they need, right? But if I got for instance, my first 3 years at Missouri, we had a kickoff guy that, had one of the strongest legs in the country. And like, that first year was kind of normal until I trusted him. And then I saw, he did it in the game, did it all season. And the next year I'm like, I don't really care if this guy gets one kickoff during fall camp. Like, as long as he's ready to go week 1, like that's all I care about. And I think, obviously that's an extreme example, but I think you got to be really, really smart with those guys. And then I think, what I tell them is, your body better than anybody, and you got to communicate. I'm gonna lay out the plan. I'm gonna communicate the plan. They're gonna know what days they're kicking, what days they're not, ahead of time. But you got to communicate with me and on how you're feeling, how you're doing. And this isn't like toughness camp, right? This is, especially the top tier guys, the guys you're expecting to start. And then I think it also depends on what your situation is, right? If you got, 2 kickers competing, or you got 2 punters competing, man, like you got to get reps. You got to get reps, and you got to see those guys and see what they can do and put them in situations and as much as you can. So that's kind of preseason camp. And then, in season, our guys, our coverage units are on Tuesdays. So that's kind of their heaviest volume day during the week. And then they will also, we kind of do a walkthrough Thursday and a fast Friday. So really, if you're a starter for me, you're going to kick on Tuesday, and you're going to kick just a little bit to kind of fire up that central nervous system on Friday. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get, especially for the starters, and a starting kicker and really a punter is, if my punter is a guy that's going to get 100 reps on game day, let's say, when I say 100 reps, I'm talking, pre-game warm up, in the net, whatever. If he's one of those guys that constantly has to be in the net and to feel confident and feel ready to go, they might get 100 strikes on the ball. That's realistic. And that's something that you should, in my opinion, you should know and count and tally. If that's the case, what I want to do during the week is I want to try to get at least 75% of that volume-wise throughout the course of the week, so their body's ready for it. You know what I mean? I think that's a big deal. You talk to guys, especially in the league, that have been doing it for a while. I mean, they'll all tell you, like, game day is a mother for those guys. And some guys are different, but it's they have to feel confident going into the game physically and mentally. And we all know some of their, mental toughness or mental focus or whatever you want to call, like, isn't the best, right, with some guys, or it's better with others. And so part of that is their routine, right? And I just think you got to be willing to have some open dialogue. And I tell them, like, I'm not a guru. Like, I don't have all the answers. I have a vision. I have an idea. I know what the expectations are of what we're asking you to do. But let's work together to maximize performance.
If I could just add one thing onto what Erik said, like Kevin, I think this is one of the most important questions like that you're going to have to answer as a special teams coordinator. And it's so important that you address kick counts with your guys because you're balancing two really hard things. You got an 18 to 22-year-old that's full of testosterone and wants to prove that he belongs on the football team, right? And then the dichotomy of that is, we got to rest you. And we don't want them to feel soft either because you got to address it with your guys that you're going to be kicking through some pain. You're going to have a blister, a hurt groin, your hip's going to hurt. Like you're going to have to kick through that. And that's why we're resting you. That's why we're putting a kick count on you. It's not because of this or that. But when it's hot out in the summertime and they're out there just the first couple of days of camp, just bombing balls, you got to have the discipline as a coach to talk to these guys like real man-to-man talk. Hey, this is why we're shutting you down. This is why we're doing what we're doing. And I think the kick count kind of opens that conversation like Erik was talking about. I just think it's one of the most important things that's glazed over as a special teams coordinator.
I would encourage you guys to call others and talk. I actually call Coach Link and ask him what he's doing. So summer plan's very similar to his. I know this. I know when my guys come back, wherever I've coached, when they come back and they haven't kicked in a while, usually looks pretty darn good. So I tell our guys all the time, as we go, talking specialist, as we go, typically our team goes. Meaning as we go on punt and on kickoff and on field goal, that's how our team goes. Our coverage is usually pretty good when we operate really well from a specialist standpoint. So piggybacking exactly what Coach Link and Coach Cain said was that we got to get them to peak on Saturdays or whenever the game is. If you have a Saturday, Thursday turnaround, you have a big break, whatever it is. Very similar to all of them. The only thing I would say for guys, I didn't kick either. I might have punted a little bit, but I was a quarterback. So that wasn't my area of expertise. But what I have learned is that every kid's different. And I don't think there is one thing you can set up that says this is the way it should be. The other thing I would say on that is I think it's important to have open dialogue, exactly what Coach Link was talking about. You got to talk to him. You got to feel. I coached a kid who has a legitimate shot at the NFL this year that he always feels good. And I appreciate that. He's, yeah, coach, I feel great. I could go all day. Well, yeah, you could, but at the end of the day, you're not going to be at your peak. So I think one thing for us as special teams coordinators or aspiring special teams coordinators is you got to get a feel for each of your kids. And the one that always says, yeah, I'm good. I feel good. How do you feel there? I feel good. I can go. You got to monitor that. And I think volume, like Coach Link talked about, if we're going to hit this many on game day. Now, I would also encourage you to get out there in pregame. Like, you better be there. I've got guys, everybody wants to be the best pregame kicker in the world. I don't care what you do in pregame. I care what you do in the game. I've never won the game in pregame at any phase, anything. So monitoring that, I think, is critical. But getting them to peak on Saturdays and having the confidence to peak on Saturdays is important. The only other thing I wrote down is when to push, right? During the off season, during June, during July, something's bothering you, something's not good. That's not, my hamstrings are a little tight because of the focus on working out. We got 2 days a week we're going to kick, or 1 day in June, 2 in July. If I'm not feeling great, then that's not a time, in my opinion, that we push. During the season, when the game rolls around, I might not be great during the week because I'm hurting, something's going on. Saturday, it's time to push. Like, that's the game. We have a guaranteed opportunity. Let's go let it rip. So establishing that mindset, right? So much of that is mindset in the off season, and knowing that, yeah, that you're not going to, you woke up that morning, you feel 100% of what you are today. I'm 100%, baby. Let's go, of whatever I got. And that's the time to push through. But really monitoring that, and you got to get a feel for your players. You got to know them. Some kids will show up every day and be like, yeah, I got this tweak, I got this, I got that. Okay, you got to push that kid all the time. The other guys, coach, I'm good, I'm 100%. Well, that's the guy you're gonna have to pull back. But you got to get a great feel for your players.